an education technology business. I suppose lately I would call myself an education technologist. And what we do primarily is we take educational content, school material and university material, and we try to deliver it through different mediums. So we deliver through videos, through television, through CD-ROMs, and through the internet. I suppose just myself and my partner are actually Jewish, but people are employed, I suppose, for their skills, and we're still primarily a small business, so skills are very, very important. I personally do take off all Jewish festivals and holidays, and people don't seem to mind. And then I've told all our staff can also take off any holidays that they want, but they must pick their religion. Obviously, the major Jewish holidays, the offices do shut down, so that is one thing that does happen. The major Muslim holidays, we don't really have Muslims working here, come to think of it.
I'm the managing director of Mandla Net, and what Mandla Net actually does is provide internet services for companies in South Africa and worldwide. One of the projects initially that Mandla Net had undertaken is to bring all the Muslim communities in Africa basically onto one site. What it does, it allows Muslims an opportunity to be able to talk about what their particular communities do, what their mosque activities are. It's very, very important for us as Muslims to understand that we live in a global community where lots of people are not Muslims as such, but we share the same humanitarian values and we share very similar morals. And for this we have to respect other people's faith.
In terms of Islamic religion, I mean, I've looked into it a little bit, so I'm quite excited to actually go to a mosque. I understand that the religions are very similar, they come from a similar source. On sometimes I often think, and maybe this is from the media, that it's a very fundamental religion, but I suppose a lot of the Muslims would feel that I'm a fundamentalist too, so it would be nice to see it and have the opportunity to go in as not just the onlooker, to be involved.
As a Muslim, you have this in the back of your mind that you do, like you have conservative Muslims as well. You have the Orthodox Jew, and the way that they practice is very similar as well.
This story starts on Thursday at sunset, the start of the Muslim holy day of Juma.
The Friday starts Thursday night, after the sunset. That's why we've seen that on Thursday night, that prayer is in preparation for this new day of Jummah. And you'll see the people chanting praises to the Lord.
Basit met Rael and experienced his first Jewish prayer meeting at a synagogue.
At the synagogue I noticed something very interesting, and the interesting thing was the way the prayer was actually read. And the prayer was read in Hebrew, and yet it sounds so similar to the Arabic language as such, and the way the people, especially the congregation themselves, chanted to the prayer was very similar to when Muslims would read the Holy Quran. You could pick up a lot of things in the text that appears in the Holy Quran as well, especially the glorifying of one Lord. And in the Jewish tradition they would say Hashem, and we would say Allah. The whole concept of prayer, if you look in the two religions, are very, very similar as well. Is you're glorifying your Lord and you're giving hamd, that's praise, to your Lord.
The next morning, just before midday, Rael met Basit at his office. They are going to go to the mosque together.
According to the verses in the Holy Quran, it is important for Muslims to close their stores, their businesses at that point in time when the khutbah is basically going on. And the khutbah is the lecture that's going on. Muslim staff would all get together just before the time of the Jummah prayer and all would go to a common mosque that we will choose for the Friday.
The Friday, the day is called Jumu'ah in Arabic, and basically the important part of the day consists in the prayer just after midday.
The prayers were quite short. There was a short prayer session, people were walking in, it was very informal, and there was a guest speaker who spoke.
My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
The sermon is generally conducted either by the person who leads the prayer, or many mosques have guests for that day to do the sermon. The sermon generally is or talks about issues of the day, issues facing the community at that particular time. So it's supposed to be a very contextual sermon.
What I thought was maybe this was the religious part of the service, where they'd have, in Judaism would call it a shi'ur or a lesson, and he'd probably be discussing the Quran. I mean, one of the things I was thinking in the mind is the similarity to Hebrew kept on coming up. There were certain words that I was picking up just because of the Hebrew. As I was standing up there, not really knowing what was going on, the next thing everyone was down, and I was just standing up. In Judaism, one doesn't traditionally prostrate oneself before. We don't really bow down, and you can bow down to God. There's not a problem. In Judaism, you don't bow down. But when I was walking out, it was quite nice. First of all, everyone was friendly, and I started seeing the similarities of religion on its social scale. Basit, his friends were coming up to him saying, hello, how are you doing? Also, I noticed that a lot of the men stayed around outside chatting for almost longer than the prayer service itself.
What normally happens on a Friday especially, because normally during the weekdays, we would only have a supper as an important meal. On Friday, we'll make it as a meal that the family will spend together after the Friday khutbah. That's the Friday lecture and the Friday prayer. And that's why we would gather here as a family at home, sitting, and sometimes I would bring a friend along, and we'll discuss the actual lecture, we'll discuss the day of Friday, and it's a way of getting together the family on differently from the other days.
Oh, well, thanks very much. Basit, why is the Friday holy? What gives it its holiness, and why is it today that you have a special meal?
If you look at the Quranic scripture as well, there is the Surah Jummah. It's a particular chapter in the Quran dedicated to this particular day. Every day of your life, you're doing something that's similar, and you go to work, and all. In an Islamic community, you get 5 times that you have to pray. And what happens, the afternoon prayer on a normal day is basically four rituals that you perform. On Friday, this is reduced to 2 rituals. And on Friday, what is very important is, even if you've got small mosque in your community, all those small mosques would close and come to a bigger mosque, and the communities would all come and congregate at this mosque. That's why you see the mosque being much more fuller. And the message that the Imam stands there gives must be about that community.
Basit, do you wake up on Friday morning and you feel the holiness of the day?
Yeah, you feel that the day, like you would feel the day special for Sabbath, we would feel that it's extremely important, that this is the day, the one day that you can look at the whole week and say what you've done good or where you have faulted. Those are the issues behind the whole Friday.
Yeah, so one of the things that I found interesting about the mosque was how there aren't actual formal prayer books. And when people arrive, they all generally say a prayer, and is it the same prayer they're saying, or is it a personal prayer?
It's a personal prayer, but the ritual is the 2 rituals that you see. That they stand up, then they go into prostration, stand up again, go into prostration, and they sit down. And while they're sitting down, everybody reads a similar prayer.
I was going to ask you about the second sermon. Was that could be about anything? Is there a calendar, or are there...
In fact, the second sermon is also a sermon that has to talk about issues of the day. And it also has to have some verses from the Holy Quran mentioned in it. The sermon also was talking about the millennium in Arabic as well. So those Muslims who understand Arabic could understand exactly what was being said.
Yeah, because also in the synagogue, the rabbis generally speak in English, or the language of the country. Also, one of the things is there were a few people had head coverings. Some had just simple white ones, the other ones had fancier ones. There was even some young people with color woven ones.
So with little mirrors inside.
So what is the theory or the law behind
Apparently, if you look at the tradition of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there are lots of traditions which say that he did wear his headgear while he prayed, and some of the traditions say that he took off his headgear and put it down and then prayed without anything on his head. And that's why you would get certain schools of Islamic religious thought that will allow you to wear the headgear or not wear the headgear.
This is delicious, actually. This food it really is. We haven't had a chance to discuss the food.
The dishes that are prepared, they come from a particular culture, and they have, especially the spices, it's basically from an Indian culture. And if you look at Arabian foods that they eat are much more mild, much more bland. So the food hasn't a very important significance as far as the religious context is concerned. It's the getting together and being together. As far as alcohol is concerned, that's obviously there's a sensitivity involved in there because Muslims are not supposed to be near alcohol as well. I'm talking about being near in an environment of drinking. Yes, and it would be regarded as disrespectful for Muslims to stay in that environment where alcohol is being consumed. What about the Jewish community? Is drinking? I know wine is allowed, but like casual drinking.
Occasional drinking is, well, first of all, which you'll see on Friday night and Saturday, on Shabbat you do drink wine, and it's actually part of the ritual.
Okay.
At Jewish affairs or like weddings, people do drink, and they like to drink at a happy occasion, a simcha so-called, but the overindulgence in alcohol is obviously not permitted. So on Friday night after the shul service, you'll be coming to me for dinner, and are there any foods that you wouldn't particularly eat?
As far as the scriptures in the Holy Quran are concerned, and lots of scholars would say that only halal food, that's those food that has been slaughtered by a Muslim priest or by a Muslim itself, would be acceptable. Some Muslims would eat Christian and Jewish food as well, and I would eat Jewish food without having any problem about it, so there's no problem. Yeah. And as for yourself?
Well, as for myself, strictly speaking, I mean, I'd say a very, very orthodox Jew wouldn't be eating here because there are a lot of laws about the preparation of even vegetables and things and fish and meat. So I personally wouldn't eat meat. Yeah, or chicken. Is this chicken? This is fish. But fish, as long as the fish for me has got fins and scales, I'll eat it.
The word kosher means prepared. So when we refer to it as food, this is food that is prepared in accordance with Jewish law and is okay for Jewish people to eat.
Well, the word halal simply means permitted, compared to its opposite, which is haram, which is prohibited. And so you get halal food and you get haram food.
We'd not mix milk and meat, because as the Torah says 3 times, one should not see the baby goat in its mother's milk. And so the rabbis expound from the 3 times that it is mentioned, one may not cook milk and meat together, one may not eat the product, and one may not benefit in any way from a mixture of milk and meat.
As for food that is prohibited, it includes, for example, alcohol, which is completely prohibited, and then in pork, which is also prohibited, and then in terms of other types of meat, the animal needs to be slaughtered in a particular kind of way so that all the blood drains out from it, from its body, as well as that when the animal is slaughtered, there shouldn't be any name of any deity taken over the animal except the name of God. The Arabic of the prayer, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, walillahi alhamd. God is the greater, God is the greater. There is no object worthy of worship but God. God is the greater and all praise is due to Him.
We only eat animals that have cloven hooves and chew the cud. And they have to be slaughtered in a special way. There's a swift incision on the anterior side of the animal's neck, just by the throat, and over in a split second, it allows the animal to bleed properly. We don't eat blood. It has stickers on or clips to ensure that the meat that the lady's buying is the same meat that the butcher got, that the shochet, the ritual slaughterer, prepared at the abattoir. All other products, if you go into any of the shops, you'll see a little diamond on that says BD. That's our local Beth Din, our ecclesiastical court, that has sent a supervisor to the factory to ensure that there are no problems there, that all the products that are used in that are kosher.
Shabbat starts on Friday at sunset and ends Saturday sunset. Rail invited Basit to Shabbat dinner with his sister and friends.
On Friday afternoon at dusk, we have our ladies in the homes light candles, which ushers in the Sabbath. The synagogue service begins at that time, where the congregation gathers to offer a welcome prayer to the Sabbath, which we call the Queen, the Sabbath Queen. After the prayer service, we go home, where we have a family meal.
The Friday night meal, which is very important socially for the family as well as a religious ritual.
Sanctification or kiddush is made over a cup of wine. Everybody partakes thereof. Items that would be of interest would be 2 loaves of bread called chalot, or in South Africa kitka, and that symbolizes the 2 portions of manna that the Almighty gave the Jewish people in the desert. There are certain songs that are sung that relate to the sanctity and beauty of the Sabbath, the harmony that it brings within the home and within the community.
Is that specially prepared, or it's not normally the same food that you would have normally, or it's special?
No. Well, here's some chopped herring. Traditionally, it's also eaten with this.
And it's also spiced with a whole lot of pickles as well.
It's spiced. And try it out, and then you have this kichel, it's called, a biscuit. And people generally put the chopped herring onto a kichel to eat it, to try it out. Like this is a herring, pickled herring. And,
which is basically a fish.
It's just a fish. And just like you were mentioning how it's not very symbolic, wow, we eat. There's no real symbolism. It's just traditional.
There are certain acts that are not permitted on the Sabbath, defined as any act that shows man's mastery over nature may not be done on the Sabbath.
We don't work on the Sabbath, but it doesn't really mean work as in work, because in your house you can lift up a table if you want to.
Okay.
But whether that's, it's really the point of creating.
Classic example, you may not strike a match, for it creates fire, and that creation is what is forbidden.
How it's translated in the modern world is quite nice, and then you can look at it from a purely religious perspective, or you can look at it somehow as wholly kind of selfish perspective. I think that almost even beyond the religion itself, it sometimes can be a good idea. It also means you got to walk places, which I kind of like as well, is to spend an hour or 2 walking somewhere instead of driving, because it gives you time to often to think about things. If you're with a friend, to have a nice talk, which you don't normally have.
And there's a verse in the Torah, my power and my might have done all this. And God says, well, once a week, focus on the real thing, the Almighty, the Creator. Therefore you, the mere human being, you sit back, what's done is done. What isn't prepared, it's too late now.
But the other thing about the day generally is that you're sitting down with your family, you know there's no work, you're not allowed to work, you don't want to work. People generally...
It's a laid back
kind of thing. You don't feel like logging on and checking your email, and you can't. And that's one of the important things about the day, is that it gives you that time now that you start relaxing. One of the things that affects work is obviously the way we'd shut down on Friday afternoons and not work on Saturdays. The question of how you relate to your business. And I mean, we've discussed how the way to deal with people is try to be kind and try to be good. And but I mean, and that's one of the things that I definitely bring into the world. And one of the things I often am conscious of in a way is that I am Jewish, and I should behave in such a way, because people will not only be judging me, but they'll be judging my behavior and judging the Jews as a whole.
In fact, with Islam also, one of the 5 pillars of Islam is the whole concept of zakah. And this has become one of the fundamentals in the religion, such a fundamental that if any of the Muslim does not practice it, would be punished for not practicing it. If you're earning a certain amount of money, after taking off your liabilities, there is a percentage that you work out that works out to about 2.5%, which you take out from your business on a yearly basis. So they will take this 2.5% and then pump it to the community, back into the community. And that has made or ensured that the Muslim community as such gets the type of money needed, and you don't find poverty in your societies.
I try also to keep the business to be charitable in certain ways. And like often, when people come for charities and things, make sure that we are giving a certain amount of our income to charity.
And the whole concept of zakah also is not purely that you just have to give it to the Muslims as well. you could give it to non-Muslims as well, as long as the case is deserving. Okay, I noticed very similar to the mosque that we've been to. The women are separated from the men, and the way that it's done at the school that we've been, at the shul that we've been to, is this a thing that has been traditionally done from before?
Well, men and women have always traditionally prayed separately. And as you saw, some shuls you would have a curtain separating them. So it's also because men, they, I suppose, say would get distracted by women praying, and that's the same, I think, reason it was in the...
I think if you look at the time of the Prophet Muhammad's period in time, women and men shared the same space in the mosque, and all the history would prove that that was the case. But there was a separation between the men and the women. And what had happened is, over the period in time, in certain areas, they excluded the woman totally from the mosque. Now, with the progressive movement coming through and say, look, you've got to follow the traditions of the Prophet, let's bring the woman back to the mosque to share the same space. But that's a process that is taking, and the thing is sharing the same space, but with this specific divide.
This is one of the interesting things, and I suppose one of the reasons we're sitting together, I suppose, is the issue of fundamentalism versus progressiveness. We have a lot of strict rules and rules and customs that have come from...
Also strict rituals as well.
Strict rituals that have come from a lot of years and years. But one of the things that's happened now is, obviously, we live in a modern world, and I think we're modern people. And so we started to incorporate the traditions and take also the modern world and put them together. And I actually believe that they work very well, and they almost enhance one another. But one of the things, and especially I think to Islam and to Judaism, is that the core fundamental principles are not really allowed to change.
I find it very interesting to be in a situation to understand other religions and tolerate the religions, and you learn a lot from the other religions. What I've learned in a few days that we spent together it's wonderful. You actually see it coming through, and then you come to respect why people practice those rituals.
I just has opened my eyes and got me even thinking about my own religion and other religions, and also in the new light which has been a...
And I think it's this whole the whole thing about tolerance that's very, very important. And because we see that people can tolerate one another, then they can live together in harmony. And I think most of the problems that we see in the Middle East are also based around the intolerance that we have for one another's religion. And that's where the whole problem actually starts, where we can start understanding that we can all live together.
And we also know that if people can be tolerant, the benefit to society as a whole will be, I mean, the spillovers will be unbelievable.